Welcome back to Real Estate 101. Today we're going to continue our discussion on home renovations and talk a little bit about the construction permit process. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Daniel Ott of White Willow Design. Dan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, Dan. So what does it mean when we say construction permits? Are we not talking about just getting a building permit?
Yes and no, Joe. To all the clients that I meet, to most lay people out there, when they ask me for a building permit, that's the end result of what we do. But the building permit process of everything that's involved is such a small portion. So people say building permit, but they mean so much. What that means to me is so much more.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? How much more can be involved?
We've got zoning clearances. That could entail minor variances or even a rezoning of the property. If we're anywhere close to body of water, we've got a conservation authority. You got Niagara Escarpment Commission, you got fire department approvals, grading plans, engineering approvals, site plan approval process, and then finally also the building permit process.
Okay, so all of this sounds like very broad, and I'm assuming for each individual project you may or may not need all of these things. Is there a way to maybe break it down to more manageable categories to understand what you may need?
Yes. So I generally talk in third party. I call them third party entities. So anything that does not have to do with the municipalities themselves. So we're talking conservation authorities and stuff that are broader than just the municipality, or maybe even a Ontario overall provincial governing body.
Right.
But then you have the municipal processes themselves that break down into simply the planning department and the building department. And that just makes it much simpler to talk about.
Okay, so what about for non-city organizations?
So again, we're talking about usually conservation authorities. So if you're anywhere close to a body of water, you're going to have to be dealing with a conservation authority. And depending on the body of water, it will be different conservation authorities. If you're anywhere close to the Niagara Escarpment, then we have the Niagara Escarpment Commission. And to broaden on that a little bit, a lot of people get really worried when we start talking about those two entities, because they've heard horror stories about trying to deal with them. But they have their own design criteria that if we can design within their criteria, we can usually get a very quick approval process through them, and their approvals supersede anything the municipality can put on it. So we actually bypass some of the municipal processes and get to the building permit stage even quicker. So as long as we can appease those people, we can bypass more municipal, and it'll be a much better project altogether. So don't be as alarmed as you might think you need to be with those.
Okay, so what about the planning department?
So planning department, there's a whole bunch of different people involved in there, and it breaks down into littler departments as well. But regardless of what happens, to get to building permit in any municipality, we need a zoning clearance stamp saying, yes, we meet the zoning of this property. Now, in a lot of municipalities, in most projects that we're actually applying for now, so over 50%, we're also going to need a minor variance. And this is when you have a particular zoning on the property, which will tell us how far we can build from the sides and the front and the back. And sometimes the existing house is too far over already for one of those, or we're putting an addition on, like say a front porch, and we're going too close to the road for the zoning there. We have to ask for special permission through a minor variance to be able to do that. It's the same process to get a rezoning of the properties, but that's if we're taking a residential property and making it commercial, or something like that. So it's the same process, but it just costs more money.
Right.
And then within the planning department, we also have things like going to the engineering department for grading plans, which will require surveys and so topographical surveys. And that's more if we're putting too big of an addition on. They want to make sure that the water that's flowing off of your property isn't just filling your neighbor's pool every day with mud.
Right.
So it's all stuff just to make sure that the community is appeased. So minor variances as well. Letters go out to all your neighbors to make sure that everyone's on board with things. They have a chance to come and complain. site plan approval processes are different in different municipalities, but basically we're making sure that the house blends in with the neighborhood. We don't want mirrored images of houses side by side, but we don't also want a monstrosity of a house in the middle of a whole bunch of bungalows.
Right, like the whole scenario happening in Brampton for the last couple of years, where the gentleman built the house and the city apparently made a mistake, and now they don't know if they're tearing the house down. Were you aware of that?
There's a few of those different scenarios in a whole bunch of different municipalities.
All right, so back onto our topic. When you get to the building department, is that not the building permit phase, or what else is left for them to look over?
So once we get to the building department, I'm not as concerned. All those other entities can say so much stuff and change the whole look of the house and everything. But when we get to the building department, all we're looking for is to make sure that everything meets the building code. But it's not just the structure of the house. So that is a big portion. We're looking at the structure of the house. But we're also going to be looking at septic permits if it's out in the country. If we're tearing too much of a house down and rebuilding it, tying in with the city services, we might have to upgrade the services to bigger water lines or newer sewer lines. HVAC and plumbing all has to be looked at. Plumbing not so much in the residential world, but more in the commercial.
Mm-hmm.
But HVAC for sure, heat loss calculations on the house to make sure the furnace is big enough, and et cetera and et cetera. But it's all building code related, and as long as we've designed all of those different components properly, it should roll out pretty quickly.
Okay, so once you're done that, are you done, or?
Pretty much. Hang the permit in the window and start calling for inspections while it's being built.
Okay, so how long does this all take?
It depends so much. So if you go farther north, where everything's a little bit more lax, they're still making sure you meet with codes, but they're depending more on the inspectors and not the pre-inspectors, if you will, who are looking at the drawings. They're depending on the people in the field, making sure it's actually being built to code. The same thing further out west. My wife is from the West Coast, but in the States, and there's people there who walk in with a set of plans and walk out with a building permit.
No kidding.
Same day. Just kind of crazy. You can do some of that up north too. Around here, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a minimum of 3 weeks. 1 week with the planning department and 2 weeks with the building department. It's usually more. The longest projects I've had are in excess of about 18 months. One of those was dealing with Niagara Escarpment Commission and Halton Conservation Authority, and we had to do test boring holes in the property to test the soil stability and the erosion process because we were in a ravine lot.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time they did all of those tests and all this rigmarole and applying to this, that, and the other thing, by the time we are actually done, it was about 18 months. The other one was more recent, and we ran into an issue where close to the lake in the city of Burlington, there are still certain cul-de-sacs that are on septic systems. And it's because a lot of those roads are privately owned. So the region doesn't have the ability to come in and put sewers in.
All right.
So, but the region has a official plan amendment that says any development that happens has to be connected to municipal services. But in these particular cul-de-sacs, we run into a catch-22 because we're never going to get the allowance of, basically the streets are set up as condo corporations, and they have to have, the one I was dealing with has to have 100% compliance on the entire street to agree to do anything.
Oh.
Which is never,
right.
You never get a whole group of people to agree on one thing.
Right.
So it would never happen. So you're in a catch-22 of a whole street that's never going to get developed because you have to do something, but you can't do something because you have to do something else. And basically it took us a whole bunch of time to get through it. And because the city of Burlington was on board with it, and they basically told the region that we're going to ignore your comments on this one and proceed with a septic system because it's the only way we were going to get anywhere. And as soon as we got that approved, all the property values on the street went up because everyone was saying that they couldn't sell because no one wanted to buy it because they couldn't do anything with the house. And as soon as we got approved, no one had sold house on the street for years, and four out of 10 houses sold.
Really?
So, but definitely out of the ordinary. Generally, it's going to take about 3 months inside of all the municipal processes to get approvals.
All right. So is it important for the homeowners to be involved in this process?
No, not at all. We're here to help through all of that. There's lots of other companies who don't help with that. Contractors don't want to be doing this. Homeowners are not, usually they've never done this sort of thing before, so they're going to be inept about it. It's going to take a lot longer. We're here to help. We've done it many times. We know what we're doing. Every scenario is a little bit different, but we want to help people and get them through it as quickly as possible so they can get on the construction and start living in the place that they've designed.
All right, Dan, good stuff. For people watching and listening, how do they get in touch?
They can email us at info@whitewillowdesign.ca or call me 905-220-9419.
All right, Dan, good stuff. Thanks for coming on today's show.
Thanks, Joe.
So there you have it. If you're looking for a top home designer, get in contact with Daniel Ott of White Willow Design. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, comment, and share our videos. I'm Joe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.